Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm really glad you're here. Today's episode is one of those topics that sits right in front of us every time we walk into an auto parts store, but almost nobody questions it. Motor oil, specifically, the stuff labeled full synthetic. Because what that label suggests and what's actually inside the bottle are not always the same thing. I know some of you are already thinking it's just oil, right? As long as it keeps the engine running, who cares? But here's the thing, we're paying a premium for something they believe is fundamentally different. And the reality is a lot more complicated. Where instead of turning this into a rant, I wanted to have a real discussion, the kind you'd have in a quiet garage late at night, where someone actually pulls out the spec sheet instead of just trusting the label. Joining me today is tribology specialist Maya Chen, who spent years working with lubrication systems and understands how these oils behave inside real engines, not just on marketing brochures. Maya, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, this is one of those topics where the story people think they're buying and the chemistry they're actually getting can be very different.
Let's start with the basics. When someone grabs a bottle that says full synthetic, what do they usually imagine they're getting?
Most people picture something built from scratch in a lab, a fluid engineered molecule by molecule for maximum performance, purity, and stability. That's the mental image. And to be fair, that idea comes from how synthetic oils originally entered the market.
Right. Something very different from crude oil pulled out of the ground.
Exactly. But here's where things shift. Today, a large portion of what's sold as full synthetic actually starts as crude oil. It's refined heavily, processed under high pressure, cleaned up significantly. But the origin is still petroleum.
When people hear that, they immediately go, wait, am I just buying upgraded conventional oil with a fancy label?
In many cases, yes, that's closer to reality than the lab-built image. The industry uses what's called group third base oils. These are highly refined mineral oils. They perform well, they're stable, but they're not the same as the older definition of synthetic, which usually referred to group FA-POW oils that are chemically built rather than refined.
Or how did we get from one definition to the other? Because that seems like a big shift.
It really comes down to a legal and marketing turning point back in 1999. There was a dispute between oil companies over whether these highly refined petroleum oils could be marketed as synthetic.
And the decision basically changed everything.
Exactly. The ruling allowed these refined oils to be labeled as synthetic based on performance, not origin. So from that point forward, the word synthetic stopped being strictly about how the oil was made and started being about how it behaved.
Which sounds reasonable at first, until you realize what that does to consumer expectations.
Because the average buyer isn't thinking about base oil groups or hydrocracking processes. They're thinking, I'm paying more, so I'm getting something fundamentally better. And sometimes they are. But sometimes they're just getting a refined version of something much cheaper.
Let's talk about that price difference. Because that's where this really hits people.
Yeah, you'll often see synthetic oils priced significantly higher than conventional ones. But if both start from crude oil and one just goes through additional processing, the gap isn't always about raw material cost. A lot of it comes from branding, positioning, and what the label implies.
So people are paying for the idea as much as the product.
That's a fair way to put it. And again, this doesn't mean the oil is bad. Many of these products perform perfectly well in modern engines. The issue is the mismatch between expectation and reality.
And then there are cases where things go beyond confusion and into actual risk. I want to bring up something you mentioned earlier about outdated oil ratings.
Yeah, this is where people really need to pay attention. There have been cases where oils were sold with labels that sounded premium, but the actual specification on the back told a completely different story.
We're talking about those API ratings.
Exactly. For example, an oil-rated API, say, is extremely outdated. That classification is basically intended for engines from before 1930. It lacks the additives modern engines rely on for protection.
Or if someone pours that into a modern car,
you're looking at accelerated wear, sludge buildup, and eventually serious engine damage. It's not immediate failure, but it's a slow breakdown of internal components.
And the scary part is, the front label can still look convincing.
That's the problem. The front of the bottle is designed to sell. The back of the bottle is where the truth usually lives. And most people never flip it over.
Or if someone's listening right now and thinking, okay, I've been buying whatever was on sale, what should I actually look for?
Start with the specification, not the marketing. Look for current API ratings like SP and check your vehicle manufacturer's recommendation. That matters far more than whether the label says full synthetic in big letters.
Or the takeaway isn't all synthetic oil is fake. It's more like the label doesn't tell the whole story.
Some synthetic oils are excellent. Some are just refined petroleum with strong marketing. Key is understanding that the word synthetic isn't as strict as it sounds.
Or that's such an important distinction. Because once you realize that, you stop shopping based on the biggest text on the bottle and start paying attention to what actually protects your engine. Right, that's where we'll wrap this one. If this episode made you rethink what's sitting in your garage right now, then it did its job. Whereas always, take care of your engine, read the fine print, and we'll catch you in the next one.